When asking the question, what is needed to create the best pregnancy experience, you find that there's a lot of racial disparities that factor in. In fact, the CDC states that although Black women have a pregnancy-related mortality rate of 3.2% higher than white women, more than 60% of those could have been preventable if they had something as simple as adequate health care. So again, what is needed to create the best pregnancy experience, especially for Black women? Well, we think that if we were provided more options, resources, and government support during the prenatal and postpartum care, then the birthing experience would be healthier both mentally and physically. When doing this project, we didn't just want to read a bunch of articles that would continuously tell us a whole bunch of numbers and give us statistics on the disparities that women of color faced in pregnancy, prenatal, and postpartum. We also wanted to speak to people that saw those disparities firsthand and ask their opinions on how we could possibly fix those problems, as well as get in contact with resources that were a part of creating a better experience for pregnant and postpartum moms.
My name is Leslie, and I work at the Lakewood WIC office. I work for Franciscan Health, and I have been doing this job for about 25 years as a dietitian.
Oh, wow.
So I have had a lot of years of experience with a lot of moms, but I always enjoy learning new things too. I enjoy learning from my clients. Of course, our main focus is on nutrition. So nutrition meaning nutrition education, as well as providing the healthy foods for our moms through the WIC benefits, and as well as providing just referrals for other food resources that could be helping them, get connected with, food bank, or how to get in touch with food stamp program and things like that. So we're very much nutrition centered. And then as part of nutrition, a little branch of nutrition is breastfeeding. And we do provide amazing breastfeeding education and support. We have a breastfeeding peer counselor here that is in touch regularly with pregnant moms and providing not only coaching, but resources such as a breast pump if they're going back to work. So when they're with pregnancy, of course, the mom might need referrals for, finding a doctor, finding a dentist, food access, to get more food while she's pregnant. So it's focused on her personal needs at the time. Then after pregnancy, of course, now the baby comes in this picture. So now maybe the baby needs resources, maybe finding a pediatrician for the baby. Maybe there's a special formula the baby needs that we can work with the doctor on finding that formula. Breastfeeding, of course, and bringing in our peer counselor to help with those breastfeeding issues, especially at the beginning. And then, of course, as they get a little older, maybe the child runs into development issues, and maybe they need a referral to, a birth to 3 program, or Head Start, early Head Start. So it kind of goes in those phases that kind of pertains to whatever that phase of life is at that time. One of the WIC services is providing good assessments on how each individual is doing with growth and weight and how that is tracking along. So it'll be great to get back to really giving our clients good services like that again.
I think that a place that mainly focuses on nutrition also, because it is important. Yes, nutrition is one of you guys' core values, sure, or one of the things that you focus on most. But if the mom isn't feeling well, is she even eating anyway?
Right, and so we just kind of have to set the stage to make the client successful, right?
Right.
And really meeting those very basic needs first is so important before she's ready to launch and do maybe some more ambitious things for her family. She's got to get those basic needs met. And so I think that you've done a perfect job just then of summarizing that. Oh my goodness.
I do want to thank you, Leslie, for joining me today and having this interview.
You're welcome.
And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, I will. My goodness. Well, I just appreciate the time, and I appreciate your appreciating us.
My name is Nikita. I'm a Louisiana native from Louisiana. I'm an Army vet. I'm also a student midwife attending Midwife College of Utah. I also am a doula locally here in Tacoma, Washington. I chose to be a doula due to my personal experience through my birthing, as well as when I was in the military, just seeing different births and how different races was treated in the hospital, and it led me to do some research, and then I learned about the systematic racism and within the healthcare field with African American women and how they die at a 5 times higher rate than any race. So that prompted me to become a doula, because I found out that doulas help minimize that as well as advocate for women of color.
In Nikita's opinion, Black women experience a high pregnancy-related mortality rate due to a man by the name of James Marion Sims, who was also known to be the father of gynecology. His beliefs that Black women experience less pain than white women is something that haunts the medical system today.
He performed surgeries, cesareans, births, things like that, unmedicated, no anesthesia, just heinous things, and decided to set the standard for today, which tells society that women of color are stronger, we can endure pain up to a certain extent, to not listen to our screams, our cries, our pain, and to not be heard. And now to this day, most women of color die due to not being heard, or if they're in pain, being told that they're not in pain. A lot of things. I remember when I was going into labor and I knew I was going to have that baby that day, and the nurse told me, there's no way you're in labor because you wouldn't be standing here talking to me. But having a midwife and going to those centering groups prepped me for that. So I knew the techniques to stay calm and to take my mind off the pain to where you're not thinking about it. So I was able to advocate for myself and tell her, I know my body well enough to know that I'm having that baby today, and my water might not have broke, but I'm in labor. And lo and behold, I had my baby that night. I would say a lot of the laws that have passed to ban midwifery does hinder a lot of Black midwives, because for us to have such short numbers of us, it's hard for us to get our foot in the door. It's hard for us to practice the way our ancestors was supposed to practice, which is traditionally. Most midwives in the South have to go be a certified nurse with midwife and work in the hospitals, which to me defeats the purpose of being a traditional midwife. But as of now, I will say a law that is being passed that is helping us is for doulas. For example, I'm working with an organization that's trying to pass a bill to allow insurance to cover doulas, so that we could still get paid regardless of the client being able to afford it or not.
Another person we interviewed was Fern, an Evergreen student like I am, but also a doula and clinical midwife.
I use the term people who give birth because not only women literally give birth. I identify as a non-binary person, and I really don't identify as a woman, right? I have a womb, I have breasts, I can give birth, I will at some point, but I don't identify as a woman. So when I give birth, that's gonna suck for me, because people are gonna call me a mom, and they're gonna call me a woman, and they're gonna use she, her pronouns, and like not everyone's gonna get it. Actually, advocacy equals prevention, and so if we can plan, we can oftentimes mitigate. The next questions is, how do non-pregnant people advocate for folks that are pregnant? And I love that question too, because I'm like, you can advocate by bringing a meal to somebody that's just had a baby, or calling them up once a week and saying, how are you really, how are you feeling? How are you doing? What has this experience been like for you? Are you okay? And again, just there's a myriad of things we could talk about, but to focus in on the postpartum period, there are so many ways to just check in, make sure that someone's okay during that time. That is advocacy. And I think especially for women of color and folks of color that are giving birth, I think culturally competent care and access to midwifery is really, really important. And I think, I don't know, I mean, Yeah, I think I mean, and it's difficult not to talk about capitalism and colonialism when we're talking about why is it difficult, why is it and potentially dangerous for women of color to give birth in hospitals versus at home? Why are Black women, for example, dealing with higher infant mortality rates and rates of postpartum depression, nationally? Why is that happening? It's like we kind of have to look at the ways that capitalism, I think, colonialism, yes, absolutely, the structures that are oppressive generally, and then sort of within that, capitalism has sort of infiltrated the birth world. The due date, for example, the due date is a made-up fictitious thing, right? It's not real. It's something that was created by the insurance companies. It's a way to measure pregnancy. It's a standard, and sure, that's okay as a guideline, but in reality, people give birth when it's time to give birth, right? And in some circumstances, we need to induce labor, right? We have to do that. It's the right time. It's what's called for. But in many cases, the due date is not relevant. I think in terms of laws and policies, I think we need longer family leave. Of course, we need longer family leave. I really advocate for longer family leave and family leave for both parents, right? Whether those are same-sex parents or opposite-sex parents, that's really important for mitigating postpartum depression, for example, so that the person who gives birth really has help of another person.
In the end, there are several factors that impact women of color during pregnancy. Just like childbirth, the conversation does not start or end there. It begins with the prenatal stages and carries on into postpartum. Education, government policies, resources, advocacy, and social views all are part of fixing the very huge systematic problem that is plaguing mothers of color and their families.
Right? We know that racism affects our health. We know that that is a social determinant of health. We know that class impacts your health. We know that's a social determinant of health. And if we think about how it impacts our health, of course it's going to impact the way that we give birth and are able to be okay after we have babies.